All right, let's get into it. We're going to be talking about copyright today, but specifically, we're diving into the really interesting stuff, how creative works get shared and used. We'll start with the standard rules, licensing, but then we're going to uncover this powerful legal tool that can sometimes just throw those rules right out the window. So let's kick things off with a big question. Can you actually, legally, use someone's copyrighted material, a song, a book, whatever, even if the creator flat out says no? I mean, your gut reaction is probably, of course not. But the real answer is way more complicated and, honestly, kind of surprising. Okay, so before we get to that surprise, we've got to cover the fundamental rule of copyright. This is the bedrock principle that everyone knows, the one that puts creators in the driver's seat. Normally, if you want to use a creative work, you get a license. Now, the easiest way to think about this is like you're renting it. You're not buying it. The creator still owns their work, but they're giving you permission to use it, and they get to set the terms. How long you can use it, where you can use it, and usually how much you have to pay for it. And here's the most important part. In a standard license, the creator is in complete control. They are the king. They call all the shots. They decide who gets to use their stuff and how. And if they say no, well, that's pretty much the end of the line. But what if it's not the end of the line? What if there is an exception? Well, there is, and it's a huge one, a powerful exception to that idea of the creator's absolute control. It's called a compulsory license, and what it is a legal mechanism, something written right into laws, like India's Copyright Act of 1957, that allows the law to grant permission even when the owner refuses. It's this fascinating moment where the focus shifts from the creator's private control to the public's interest. This comparison really gets to the heart of it. A regular voluntary license, that's just a commercial deal, a private agreement. But a compulsory license, that's a whole different ballgame. The permission isn't coming from the owner, it's coming from the law itself, handed down by a body like a copyright board, which is basically a court that specializes in this stuff. The whole point shifts from making a profit to guaranteeing public access. So this, of course, raises the big question. When can the law actually do this? When can it step in and force a creator's hand? Because it's definitely not a free-for-all. This can only happen under very, very specific circumstances. Under the Indian Copyright Act, there are basically 3 main pathways that can trigger one of these compulsory licenses. So let's just walk through each one and see how this actually plays out in the real world. Okay, so the first path opens up when a copyright owner just isn't making their work available. I mean, think about it. A song, a book, a film exists, but the owner just refuses to release it in India. The law basically says, hey, creative works are meant to be shared, not just locked up in a vault. And to really get this, let's look at a classic showdown: music rights holders versus radio stations. This case is a perfect example of why this rule is even on the books. So what happened here was, a radio station wanted to play certain music, but they just couldn't get the licenses they needed from the Copyright Society. So they took it to court. And under Section 31 of the Act, the court actually sided with them. It granted a compulsory license, pretty much setting the precedent that if a work isn't available on reasonable terms, public access can win out. Path number 2 is all about bringing foreign works to a local audience. So imagine there's a really important international book that nobody's translated into a local language, or maybe some music that the owner just won't release in a certain country. This rule is designed to build a bridge over that gap. And of course, there's a key case about this exact problem, trying to get international music to Indian listeners when the original owners weren't playing ball. In this one, a company wanted to publish foreign sound recordings in India, but, you guessed it, they couldn't get the licenses. So, citing Section 31A of the Act, the Delhi High Court stepped in. It granted a compulsory license, which really drove home the point that the public interest includes having access to foreign culture and knowledge. And that brings us to our third and final path, which is maybe the most open-ended one. This applies whenever a copyright owner is, for any unreasonable reason, just stopping the public from getting to their work. For our last case study, let's look at something we all depend on: the news. So what happens when important information is just kept away from the public for way too long? In this case, some news articles were being withheld from the public for what the court found to be an unreasonable amount of time. So, under Section 31B, the Madras High Court decided this was against the public interest. It granted a compulsory license so the articles could be published, making it clear that access to information is a really high priority. So, after looking at all these cases, you start to see the bigger picture emerge.
This whole concept isn't about stealing rights from creators. It's really about finding a very, very delicate balance.
And this really gets to the core philosophy of it all. Compulsory licensing exists to make sure copyright is doing both of its jobs. 1, rewarding creators for what they do, but 2, making sure society has access to knowledge and culture. You can think of it like a legal safety valve for when that balance tips too far in one direction. Which leaves us with one final and really important question to think about. In our world today, where culture and information are everywhere, where exactly do we draw that line? What is the perfect balance between the rights of a creator and the benefit to all of us? There's no simple answer, but that debate, that's right at the very heart of why copyright law even exists.